Naugu ge san in, Cherokee waiting. Tali squa tal du he iani kali Cherokee ani woni skin. Dini yole anale niha andole qua Cherokee uni woni hi stin. Ase no, jun tana unadudala juni kusta din. Sku no galandi din dole kwaski anelti ha juni stelti dini yole.
Siêu thứ hai đi gặp sao là hi đã quên đó nó là chỉ ở Husky nó là chỉ chalagi đi Kalaga Dunadaska ani chalagi đi Giyawi galala đi chundela kwasti ở hiện cho Kalena odala chuni la wisti để chỉ ở Husky Ben Fry. I'm a professor at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. I'm a citizen of the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians, and I teach Cherokee Language.
Chill. Hello, how you ini? Dagwadona. Ale Shuka, how you ini? Dagwadona. Hello, my name is Micah Swimmer. I'm the Adult Language and Education Coordinator at ᎦዀឌᎬᎢ Academy. The purpose of ᎦԿឌᎬᎢ is to create fluent speakers so that we could save our language.
Kendesatihi dawado yonek ia gawoseho NSU utan jundel kwas dagilostane Assistant Professor of Cherokee and Indigenous Studies dagilostane. So in English my name's Kendesatihi and then they call me Pumpkin. I am an assistant professor at Northeastern State University in Tahlequah, Oklahoma.
Chiều đôi đào của đào, cái đại yêu host kia, theo kia asti, trường đại học khoa sĩ cái là cái đại yêu host con, đào lên Stanford School, cái đại yêu host con. Hello, my name is Gil Jackson, or Do-Yi, which is a Cherokee word for outside. I teach at the University of North Carolina at Asheville, and I also teach at Stanford University in California.
Shianagada, Scarlet Dagwado, Cherokee, North Carolina, Zinela. I am currently at Duke, but I will always live in Cherokee. I will always come back home. The reason why I go to Duke is because it's an in-state college. I've always wanted to be here. I am a freshman at Duke University, and at Duke I am involved in the Duke University Marching and Pep Band. I am involved with Duke University's low-income first-generation group on campus, and I'm also the first-year representative of the Native American Student Alliance. I've lived in Cherokee, North Carolina my whole life. My mother's side is Cherokee. I am an enrolled member of the EBCI. I went to Cherokee Central Schools from 6th grade through 12th grade. I graduated from Cherokee High School as the valedictorian. I've just always lived here in the mountains.
Siêu Cherokee đào tàu dầu này chắc là cái ở khu đào tàu thảo school sau ở đây thì Oklahoma Awatessa Stillwell Awatessa ở San Gitayo Janela NSU Gale Utah Cherokee Gawani History Dawes Dawak Sesto Kali Jiyawia Jijalak Ale Jiguso Gayot. So my name is Trey Pritchett. My Cherokee name is Ꭶḵต่ํᎯᎯᎤ. I'm 21. I am a junior at NSU. I'm from Stillwell, Oklahoma, but I live in a little community just outside of Stillwell called Cherry Tree. But I live on campus at NSU. That's where I go to school. I'm a junior there. My major is Cherokee education. I'm a full-blood Native American. I'm Cherokee and Creek.
Đi cái tàu đã có tàu, rồi có cái đại thiên, nếu mà đi hết đi cái lò xăng, nó là giá là không cái đi cái lò xăng, ở cái tàu là chúng ta là cost đã cái là vast này không, giá là cái món này history còn đấy là quá, đi cái giờ Kê Lan đi lấy cái điều đó nó là cái tàu large do na chúng tàu cho những này cho tất nhiên gì này không nó là giống tax cái này start zinogistishki. My name's Matthew. I'm 30. I live in the Painttown community. I'm from North Carolina. Work over at the Ꭶ噚蜱 Academy as an adult language learner. And I also have, my mom's name is Carolyn Driver, and my dad's name is BIP. And I got 3 brothers, and I'm also a flute player.
Show Gistu Jigalili Dawadon or Jalagi Gatti Yona Gatti Cassidy Chickalili Galavis Tuti Janela Nole Aguinasha. It's where I live, or Snowbird's where I live. And I'm just trying to learn right now and hopefully be able to teach it one day.
Right now, I'd have to say the biggest obstacle is the leadership. That's why I've taken over the adult program and started doing that so we could teach the adults how to talk Cherokee. That's what we're focusing on right now, is focusing on teaching adults how to talk Cherokee. We need to be recording the language, documenting it, recording our speakers, recording the flow of their language. If we have just paper, words wrote down, printed off, then that's okay, but you're going to lose the flow of the language. You're going to lose the intonations, and it's not going to be spoken the same way it's been spoken for thousands of years. And a good example of that is, there's this guy teaching Cherokee Language on YouTube, and you can tell he reads the language. He hasn't ever heard anybody speak it. So when he says, "What are you doing?" he says, "Dohadane, dohadane," and that's not how we say it. We say dohadane, huh, or dohadane, and that's kind of how it gets chopped up. It gets mispronounced. And we need to have people in place to do these, because right now, as it is, if I have a recorder and you have one, when we lose our last fluent speaker, everybody's going to be turning these in, saying, "Hey, there's language on here. What can we do? How can we save it?" At least we'll have the language in its form still, in conversation, but we got to get started now.
Yeah, so right now in North Carolina we have somewhere along the lines of 17,000 citizens of the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians, and I think the number hovers around 200 first language speakers of Cherokee right now, and for the most part they are 65 years old and over. And they're also, for the most part, not passing the language on in the home. Unless we get it passed on in the home as a first language again, with the rate that we're losing our elders, then within 20, 25 years, maybe even less, it won't be here anymore. So that's why I think it's so important to teach it. And we do have a Ꭶ噚蜱 Academy, but that's an awfully large burden to put on those little shoulders, as my friend Mo Taylor likes to say. One of the issues is that the kids may decide, because they hear English all the time outside of school, and the only time they speak Cherokee is in school, they may decide, well, this is not cool, we don't want this, or we don't want to use this. And so the concern is that if they don't see it modeled outside of school, that they may decide that they would rather just use the majority language, which is English.
We're at a point right now that if something doesn't change real quickly, we only have about 200 fluent speakers left, and that's not a good sign. So it's gonna be a rough road.
EBCI has a little over 200.
Yeah.
210, 215-ish. I'm not exactly sure exact number. Cherokee Nation, we've counted a year and a half ago, we counted 23, 21. And 6 months ago, we did another census. I think we was like a little over 1,500. I think somewhere, so 1,500, 2,000, somewhere there within the past 6 months to a year.
Well, in the U.S., Western language ideology is really that monolingualism is best. English monolingualism specifically. So trying to kind of combat that ideology and bring the prestige of Cherokee speaking back into our communities, to remind people that Cherokee's really special, and it's, ᎦዀმაგრᎯ, like it's sacred, And I think that for us to do that, we are going to have to, we're going to have to see our children speaking the language, because children and teens are innovators when it comes to language, because we want to be able to talk about everything in the world around us. And so I think for us to bring Cherokee back into everyday use, we're going to have to see those demographics using the language.
You can't just pick up a phrase and say, "Oh, I can speak." That's just one phrase. How can you use them? Can you conjugate it? Can you use it in a sentence? Can you, use it in these different formats? You only know that one way. And one word is a total of 10 conjugations. That's from me to you, to him, to you two, to you all, to all of us, to they, to you and I, but I'm talking to somebody over here, to all of us, but I'm talking to somebody else about us. That's 10 ways of saying it in one word. It's a lot. It's a lot to learn, but it's not impossible.
We are attending the 3rd annual undergraduate Cherokee Language Symposium here, and we're trying as much as we can to build community around the Cherokee language. Well, one way is getting together all of the students that are learning Cherokee from all the different constituencies that we have across the country. We have students here from Stanford, we have them here from Western Carolina University, we have them here from UNC Asheville, UNC Chapel Hill, Duke. We have one from Wake Forest that we didn't realize we were going to have. That's pretty cool. And so we're getting them in touch with one another so that they kind of know that they're not the only people learning Cherokee. And the other thing is that we're tying all this work back to the community and the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians. And we're getting the students who are learning the language in touch with first language speakers of Cherokee who are here and who are sort of really the carriers of those traditions and that knowledge.
The Cherokee language, my interest in the language, wanting to learn, and also to meet others just from around the nation or different schools that also have the same interest as I do with the language.
We came to what we call ᎦຈິᎯ, which is like Old Cherokee Nation basically, for a language conference at Western Carolina University. I brought some students last year also, and we had such a good experience that I brought 6 new students this year.
I'm here because even though I'm a Duke student, I take Cherokee language classes at Chapel Hill because they are not offered at Duke. And at the beginning of the semester, the Cherokee language professor, Professor Fry, told us about a symposium type thing that they do at the Nugadua Academy every year. And I was like, I live here, I can just come home and see everyone. But it turned out to be much more than that. There's so many schools coming together, and we're just trying to exchange tips on learning and speaking the language.
Oftentimes, I will have students in my classroom who were raised outside Cherokee communities but are Cherokee citizens. But they don't feel like they can access Cherokee culture, Cherokee language, or Cherokee community because they weren't raised in it. And one of the things that I strive to do as an educator is to make sure that those students know they're welcome. They know that they are a part of us. They are a part of our community. They belong to us and we belong to them. And that is truly important. If you are Cherokee, that Ꭶ뾱Ꭿဿဋ္ဌ, the language, it belongs to all of us. And that's something, no one has to give you permission to be Cherokee. No one has to give you that permission. You're one of us.
I've always been told, because I grew up where our culture is strong, I've been taught cultural things like bow and arrows, or making stickball sticks, or weaving baskets or something. And one thing they've always told me is, did I charge you to do this? No. Did I make you pay to take this class? No. Did I make you pay to come sit in my yard and learn from me? No. So don't charge anyone else. If you're going to teach them, give it to them for free. because I didn't charge you. So that was something I learned from one of my elders that I really look up to, who's taught me a lot.
I think what I would say, probably a lot of other folks would say 100 times before, is just to use it, to learn it, learn your language, especially if that language is part of your community, part of your identity. You have more of a responsibility to take on to learn this language than the folks who aren't part of this community. And if we lose that, then we lose our status. We lose actually who we are. If we wait too long, it's going to be too late, and all you would have are just recordings and things like that. You won't be able to hear the language being spoken, flow, as it's supposed to be. You're just going to have snippets of language here and there. You're not going to get the correct intonation of that word that you're saying, And there's good reason why you have to learn those nuances to the language. If you don't, you wind up saying something a little bit different,
I remember growing up, my mom told me to say "I'm hungry" is "ǎgiyǒshǐhǎ that kind of thing. Like what? So did you understand what I said? Did that?
The first part of it.
So and that was correct.
ǎgiyǒshǐ.
And what is shangyi?
Shangyi is onion.
And is onion. So I mean, it wasn't that it was wrong. It was just that the sentence didn't make sense really.
Well, it did make sense. You were saying you was hungry
for an onion. But that's not what I meant. Yeah. That's not what I thought I meant. But yeah, exactly what you're saying. To your point.
And that's one thing. In the way we're learning at the academy, we're learning the conversational Cherokee. So we're not saying the entire word. You just said ǎgiyǒshǐhǎ, which is correct. That's the entire word in this formal setting. But if you are in a conversational setting and you're just sitting around and you got that feeling in your belly, you're hungry, ǎgiyǒshǐ, that's all needs to be said.
Well, when I was probably a teenager, I started studying the language seriously. I started talking to Grandma and hanging out with her more. And it's real simple. Anybody can do this. You write down a few words and phrases that you use every day. You write those words down, you practice them, and you say them. And it ain't just walking around saying them to yourself, although that's kind of what you do sometimes. I would put myself in a situation. I would say I got to use the bathroom, or where are you going, or I'm going here. I would learn these words and phrases, and I would say them, and I would set myself up to say them, so that when I walked into a grocery store, I'm greeting people, but I'm also telling Mom where I'm going, or I might ask somebody what they're doing. And that's kind of what it is. I learned to use these words and practice them on my own. And after I learn a few of them, so I'll write down 4 more words, and then it just grows that vocabulary the more you use it. And that's kind of how I got my language started in my household. And then my kids, I just spoke to them since they were babies, since they were born. I sing to them in the language. My wife, she's not from here, but ever since I met her and been talking to her, I've always told her about the language. I've talked to her in the language, and I've taught her Cherokee, and she's able to speak the way we do here just from what I've taught her and used at home. So we speak to our kids, and it's just a choice. It's really a choice. And the best advice I could give somebody trying to learn a language is to just take it one word at a time. If you can pick up 2, that's fine, pick up 2. But learn those words and use them. The more you use them, the more they become a part of your vocabulary, the more your vocabulary is going to grow.
If you want to make it happen, you can make it happen. And if you don't want to make it happen, you can find all kinds of excuses. You could find 1,000 excuses. And I think if I had to give a message, it would just be a message of support. You're doing a good job. And I'm impressed. And I am impressed. I've had the Stanford students for 1/4, which is 10 weeks. That's about 3 hours a week, and that's not a whole lot of time. And what I'm able to see in return has been pretty amazing. I've been pretty happy.
I would just say, if you are going to teach it, don't just have papers that you read. I mean, you need to teach syllabary, not just phonetics. I know a lot of people, when they don't learn much syllabary. When I didn't have the syllabary chart memorized when I came into college, so just having a way to speak it is the best, rather than just having kids memorize vocabulary.
To meet all kinds of backgrounds and different perspectives of the language, and just to hear what others have gone through and share my experience with them in order to help each other, because I think that really helps us. When I share it, I feel proud because it's mine. It's ours, so like, to me, it's kind of like we take pride in it. The analogy I'm thinking of in my head right now, and I don't know if it makes sense, but if it's like a little kid coming home like, Mom, Dad, look at what I did at school. Look at what I got. This is what I did. And then, like, look, this is what we have. It's a beautiful language. These are our hymns. Hear them. They're beautiful. Hear our language. Hear our speakers. When our speakers talk, it's like they're singing to each other in our language. It's cool. And I just want to share that with everybody. It's really neat.
I wish more Cherokees from here would put forth the effort that these non-enrolled members do, because they're in school trying to learn language. They're in school, studying with, Ben Fry and other people that are trying to, create speakers. But at the same time, I wish more of our enrolled members were trying to learn to speak as well, and not be so ashamed to try to use it, because a lot of them are ashamed to even try because they'll mess it up, or they'll say they're not saying it right or whatever. But it's just practice.
Well, for me, I wish there were more folks from here doing things like this, but it kind of makes me feel bad that because the other folks who aren't of Cherokee, they're wanting to learn it more than our folks are. So in that aspect, it kind of makes me feel bad. But on the other hand, these folks are kind of, in a way, helping to keep it going, And I think anything and every little bit helps. But I only wish that more of the folks here that live in this community would take an effort like these people are.
And seeing all these people just trying to learn, it's just cool to see.
I don't know exactly how many kids there are at New Gadua, but it goes from early childhood development through grade 6 now, and they hear the language, I believe, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. And a lot of them that have made it through to 6th grade, they are quite proficient at this point, and my hope is that they'll continue to use the language as they get older. We also have enough people that are learning Cherokee at the university level that I think it's really kind of exciting and promising, especially when I see the students adopting sort of some of those cultural values that we hold to be inherent in the language and encapsulated by the language. Our inclusiveness, our humor, our sense of relatedness, our belonging, all these things, the idea of gadugi, everyone coming together and working for everyone's mutual benefit. The idea of striving to hold on to or cling to one another. That sufficiency that you can gain by relying on the community and also being able to be an individual. The way I describe it is it evokes the image of people holding hands in a circle, right? You got one person on either side of you who's going to pick you up if you stumble, but you also have the responsibility to stand up by yourself, because if you decide I'm just going to flop over and let y'all carry me, then you've put that on the entire circle. So you don't want to do that. You got to stay standing, but you know that if you stumble, there's going to be somebody to pick you up, and you'll be there for the people on either side of you if they stumble in that way too. So it's a both and kind of thing. You're an individual and you're an integral part of the community.
I would really like to see the Gadua School go back to be an immersion. It can happen, but it takes a lot of work. It used to be the children would argue in English, in Cherokee. They would talk in their sleep in Cherokee, and they would hold each other accountable. And that's how immersion works. I had a young man email me about this time last year, and he said, my name is such and such, and these are my parents, I'm this many years old, and I think he was 17 at the time. And he said, would you consider allowing me to come live with you? And he could have been the poorest boy on the reservation, or he could have been the richest boy. And I answered him back and I said, why do you want to come live with me? I'm 67 years old. You're 17 years old. You don't see that kind of connection oft times. Bottom line is, he served on the panel this morning, and he's probably one or two or three strongest second language learners that I know. He may be the top language learner that I'm aware of, but he's very strong, and he basically was immersed. Yeah, and I still think that's the best way. He used to talk every day, and the only time we used English was if he told me, "Esti which means I don't understand. I'd say that we probably, by the end of summer, we were speaking about 90% of the time in the language. That's pretty amazing. Mm.
It's true. What I'm about to say is, I think in a way, the outreach has to be in some sort of education field. But with that, if you can get people who are able to do graphic design, illustrators, people in cinematography, things like that, and bring the language into those, into that type of medium, then I think it would become a whole lot wider, type of mainstream.
We would have small children speaking the language. We would have moms and dads speaking the language. I don't think that we could ever get to the point where we have 1,000 speakers and a couple thousand children speaking. But you never know. You just never know. It could happen. But for the next 10 years, I would like to see more emphasis on people coming out, having an interest in learning, and just doing what they need to do, which is be learning.
When we get together like this, we like to share methodologies, and we like to tell each other what we've been doing. We like to talk about why we do what we do and what the results are, share different kind of ways of teaching that maybe we didn't know. So I think by doing this symposium, we're enacting a lot of that collaboration that I'm talking about, which is, kind of encapsulated in the language. We're partaking in or participating in those processes of gadugi.
The problem I had when I first come out here was recognizing their sounds. So we say CO, they say shio. I had to adjust to that. And there's a lot of differences, like we say tla yigo league for I don't understand. They say geshti yigo league, something like that. So just trying to pick up on the sounds that they make. And once I got comfortable picking out their sounds, like hearing their individual sounds, then it helped me try to understand better what they were saying. It's just making the little adjustments here and there, and just the fact that we use different words. We say Ꭴန့Ꭴ for the same, and when they say that, they say ᎤᎤ. It's like picking out the difference between pop and cola.
Yeah, exactly.
Or soda.
We all have a different way of teaching. That's just a given. I think one of the things that that I learned during this symposium is that I see other people doing things. I want to see more, and I want to visit other campuses and see how they do things, because I have a lot to learn too, and they probably can get some ideas off of me. And more specifically, I would really love to go visit Dr. Fry and how he teaches. And I had spent an afternoon with his students a couple of days ago, and it was like, I was totally amazed at how much they knew. Of course, I'm amazed with my kids and my students and how much they know. But I think that it would benefit all of us, and it did benefit me to watch Dr. Fry give his demonstration. I also got a lot out of Dr. Teehee this morning when she was teaching a lesson to all of us as to her methods.
That's a big question. I teach at the Cherokee Language program at Northeastern State University in Tahlequah, Oklahoma. And we get students who come in because they've always heard Cherokee growing up and they want to learn more. We also get students who didn't have a connection but who come in and they want to learn and they want to become teachers because they want to perpetuate the language. The number of fluent speakers that we have grows less and less each year, and we have students who want to change that and who want to reverse that trend. And I'm hopeful for the future because of those students.
I really appreciate the learning that I got in high school. It's what sparked my interest in the language to begin with and why I'm pursuing it in college.
I was part of Charlie Oswald's. She was a beloved woman. She's got her picture up at the Ꭶዀ Academy. And she was my first teacher. And ever since then, I've just been fascinated by it.
I think the most successful teaching method for Cherokee language is immersion style teaching, largely because Cherokee is very different than English. And if people grew up without hearing the language, then sometimes it takes more contact hours for them to become proficient with Cherokee language. And I think because of that, immersion helps students to produce language orally, and it helps them with listening comprehension, and it gives them kind of useful everyday language. And especially guided immersion, where you're kind of targeting, I'm going to start here and we're going to end up there. So kind of doing immersion in kind of a thoughtful, targeted way, especially with communication-based instruction, where we're centering ourselves around a task or around certain kinds of movements.
Experiential learning, it helps a lot whenever it comes to our language, because you're actually doing those actions, and it can be everyday things, your morning routine, You're getting your child ready for school, you want them to put their shirt on, put your shirt on, put your pants on, you can use those, ask them, are you ready? And then actually, while you're in the shower, that's the body parts, learn your body, Ziye Shadan, that's my finger. Ziye Shadan, my fingers. Agoyen, my hand. Degoyen, my hands, Zinogan, my arm. Zinogan, my arms, Learn those body parts, and while you're in the shower washing up, you're washing your arm. You do all of that. That it's a back and forth. You can't expect this child to learn for about 8 hours and expect him to retain it when going home and hearing nothing but English. And they don't have school on weekends, so that's 48 hours worth of English that they're getting, and they have to start back over on Monday.
It's going to be a long road, first of all, and we're going to have to teach conversation. We're not, and I think people interacting, speaking the language, stepping out, being courageous, and getting over the fear of he might laugh at me or I might make a mistake. I think we got to get beyond that. And I think some of these young people are ready to step up and say, well, I'm going to stop the fear. I'm going to do what I need to do. And but on the flip side, those of us that are fluent speakers, we have got to support that. We have got to encourage that. And if I think sometimes some of us speakers might tell them, no, that's the wrong way. And that's not correct. And I think we've done a lot of harm when we make those kind of comments. I think it's a very negative way of reinforcing a behavior that we won't.
No, I think it's just from being in some of the teaching classes. I'd like to be able to learn everybody's way of teaching. If they say it differently, I'd like to learn it because I've heard it before. It's like a toolbox. You pick out one and be able to hear the rest of them, just in case you hear it again, you might be able to recognize it a little bit better. Because like Oklahoma has like a slightly different dialect than Snowbird or Cherokee and stuff like that. So if you know how everybody says it, and you've only heard it once, later down the road, a few years, something like that, you may hear it again that same way they said it, and it might click a little bit better. Because like if you only learn it one way, you'll only recognize that one way of saying it. I try to be open to anybody's way of teaching, because like if I'm going to be teaching, I like to teach how everybody else taught it as well. Because like you said, somebody might get it one way, but another person might not. I might get another way, but not the original way. This other person's way, I guess you'd say. I'd like to be open enough to learn everybody's way, and that way I can teach all the ways, and you pick out the one you like.
We grew up together, right here. We use some Cherokee language in football, but not, it wasn't anything that we used on a daily basis. What are some ways that you've either thought of or that you're instituting in your teachings to bring the language as something that's spoken every day in the community lexicon?
Well, it's that involvement. If you're putting forth the effort to try to learn a language, that's awesome. The coaches, I used to coach middle school, and that's every one of our plays, every one of my boys that I coached, they had Cherokee names. Our plays were in Cherokee. I taught them commands in Cherokee. They were using the words. Even in games, they were talking Cherokee. And that, to me, is another way we could save our language, is if, like, the coaches have language that they can pass on to these kids, and it just spreads after that. If they start calling their plays in Cherokee, these boys and girls know what it is. So I think that's a good tool. If the coaches were willing to learn that, and that's a good idea, we could probably set something up and maybe give a class, because I've already made word sheet with our fluent speakers providing the words for softball. All these different terms for softball: hit it, catch it, move up, move back, little stuff like that, hit it hard. We've also done one for basketball, so little stuff like that. If coaches would take that in, I think that would be a great thing to teach these kids, because they would have to learn it. It's a choice they have to make.
I don't know, I guess it's kind of like the same with the old ties. It was like everything wasn't like it was now. It was like everything was based on community. Everybody had enough. I feel like everybody's a part of something. And I feel like that's what we're trying to do with language again, just trying to bring that community concentration back to it, to where everybody feels like they're a part. It's just, feels like it's a part of me that's been lost, but I'm trying to find it again. Because I've always heard that language is a part of everything. It was part of the culture, it was part of the history, it was just a part of you. And I feel like I'd like to regain that aspect, I guess.
A sense of community that I felt over the weekend here would be whenever everyone would come together to eat and share a meal, and there would be fluent speakers sitting around us and different professors or people just trying to teach and also learn the language. There's people coming together and laughing and helping everyone out. That was probably the greatest sense of community that I felt. I might not see some of them again because they're from other states. There is a sense of community from that, just being here with them and knowing that we have the same goal and are reaching that. Even though they might be across the U.S., I can know in my head that people are doing this too, and the fight isn't on your own. So I think that's great. And it was also fun getting to come here and meet people, because I'm from this community, and meeting people that I didn't know and knowing that I can come back anytime I'm back home and maybe talk to them, talk about our experiences or help each other out in learning the language, and getting to be around Cherokee and going to the museum. Because I live here, I'm not just constantly visiting the museum, but getting to go and speak with people and realize that when I come home over the summer, I can help. I can work in the Gadoo Academy if they'll let me. I've talked to the museum already about an internship, so hopefully something from that will come to fruition.
Language and community. They both go hand in hand to me, just like our culture and language go hand in hand. The communities have to get together and speak, but it's mainly families, like truly, and that kind of power you're talking about, it's rooted inside our culture, and inside our culture is our language, so it would be able to help them, but they have to seek it. It's just not going to fall in their lap, you know.
I would say, especially for the students that I've had in my own classrooms, that learning language together is almost like creating a second family. And for some students, it's almost like creating a first family. For students who come from home lives and backgrounds where they haven't had that kind of supportiveness in the past. And it's a very powerful feeling of connection, because language is social. It's what connects us. And my students feel that very strongly, and they develop connections outside of the classroom and outside of the program in very, very meaningful ways. And this weekend, I think, has helped to deepen and extend that connection in great ways for us, because we spent 14 hours in the van on the way down here, 14 hours in the van on the way back. We're together the whole time we're here, and then plus they're meeting all of these other students who have the same passion and desire. So they've forged these new connections and almost like created extended family, like cousins, sort of.
I think it strengthens our community. I think any language, being it your first language that you're born with, it connects you to who you are. It's something that is supposed to be used. It's a living entity. It's a living thing, just like we are.
Even the spirit, like the ceremonial leaders there, like the chief or anybody who's a leader there, when they give talks and they give speeches, it's in nothing but the language, and they don't translate it, so you need to know that language. So I think our culture and our language strongly goes together. And another thing I mentioned this morning was lifting each other up, helping one another, because one of the things another student mentioned this morning was that we don't discourage each other. If you're at a level of fluency that I'm not, and we start at the same time, and you're beating me, don't be down on yourself, because that just shows you can catch up to them. And don't think you're better than somebody just because you're ahead of them. They just might not understand or learn the way you learn.
Really, the very first year that the students have come together and stayed in one place for the most part, and they have really got to know each other. They've exchanged emails and phone numbers, and so I think it's really been good, and that's really what the whole purpose of the symposium was about, so that they can support each other, encourage each other, and be the support that, and as I understand it, they're going to be emailing each other and even texting each other in the language. So that's what we've been wanting to happen.
Well, I know that we are definitely going to keep in touch. I've gotten a few people's social media information. Some of the people from my community I've gotten in touch with, so maybe over the summer we can meet up. And I know some of the people working at ÇDUA have a Google Drive that if you can give them your email, you'll be able to go in and see all the information that everyone can just contribute and put on together. And I think that alone will probably be the greatest thing that we can have come from this, is just this resources for everybody to have what they need to learn.
Little lessons on Facebook. I started that back in January, doing little lessons. I think I done one on opposites, time, colors and numbers, and I think I did a whole step-by-step on how to make coffee.
That's how me and some friends from my school, we started having lunch together, like a Cherokee lunch hour, once or twice a week, and we did that throughout the summer. If we couldn't have lunch, we met in the evenings in the library. We made a Facebook page to our local community. We shared it with them, said, hey, we made Facebook posts, we're going to meet at this time. We put documents up, or like little videos or whatever activity we did that night. We take videos and pictures and put them on our page. and shared that with the community. And I shared that with the other students this morning from the different universities, maybe give them an idea if they haven't thought of that already.
We do things like we'll have group chats, group texts where we talk in Cherokee, or meme culture among kind of Generation Z is kind of a big deal. So students, I encourage students to utilize social media to exercise their language skills. And so I see a lot of that. I see students who have done Cherokee language lunches and Cherokee language dinners, and getting together and creating language space for themselves, which is really exciting for me, because with Cherokee being so different from English, they have to create those spaces.
Yesterday when we were at the Yellow Hill Community Building, and I saw this guy there. I was like, man, he looks so familiar. I probably know him from somewhere. And so I finally walk over and introduce myself. And it turns out that he's from here as well. He just went to a different school. We're only a few years apart. And it was really interesting and fun for me to see my peers also trying to become fluent in the language. Because sometimes when you're way out in central North Carolina, it can kind of feel like you're the only one, or the only one in your class. So it's just very exciting to see that.
Oh, gosh. We've had really great moments in the car going from place to place, coming up with ways to say things in Cherokee, and kind of having immersion time in the car with each other. And that's something that we all wanted to do. But also, we went on a nature hike with Gil on part of the Appalachian Trail. Gil Jackson, who's a first language Cherokee speaker here from North Carolina. And Gil is very generous with his time, and he is also one of the few speakers who is willing to stay in the language 100% of the time. And we were in language probably 90% of the time we were on that hike. And so those things we'll never forget. But also encountering other teachers and other students who have the same passion for making sure that Cherokee continues to be a living language. That is something that I will never forget from this experience.
The first night we got to the cabin, we met some of the Western Carolina students. We were all sitting in a circle in the kitchen. It was cold outside, so we wanted to go inside, sit down. The tables were put up, so instead of getting out of the table, we just circled up our chairs. And we were just sitting there having a circle. And one of the guys found some Pop-Tarts in the kitchen. And he's fixing to eat them. And he's got the box, and the lady, he's like, oh, there's Pop-Tarts. And he puts them right in the middle of the circle. And the lady's like, hey, those are for breakfast. So nobody touched them. So we sit there for 2 or 3 hours talking around this box of Pop-Tarts. But the Carolina students want to know, how do you say Pop-Tart? So they're thinking, well, it's bread. Bread is gadu. And they're like, okay, so gadu. Well, now we need to think of pop. How do you say it pops? And they were going on this linguistic trip and this other stuff. And us Oklahoma kids, we were just sitting there listening to them, watching them. And I remember they were saying, gadu, gadu, something gadu. Back home, if you say gadu, it's bread. If you say gadu, it's on top. So I just kept hearing on top, on top. So they finally figured out some kind of word for it pops. And even they weren't sure. They was just kind of looking at a little resource dictionary thing. And they're like, we're going to go with this word, something, something gadu. Or I was like, okay. And they was like, what would y'all say? They said, well, I told them, I said, well, back home, it's just uganost. They said, what is uganost? It's something sweet. Uganost can be a Pop-Tart, it can be cookies, it can be cake, something, it's a sweet treat. I understand they don't have access to Cherokee speakers like we do. And so the speakers, I'm fortunate enough that I was blessed to grow up in a strong language community. I live next to 7 other Cherokee speakers just within my neighborhood. And so if I have questions, I can run across the yard and ask somebody. And, I understand they don't. And so just by talking to our speakers, we ask them, how do you do this? How do you do that? And it's having an actual Cherokee speaker sitting next to you, it's so much better than having a notebook or a dictionary or something online.
I'll give you an example. One of the young girls came up to me the other day and she said, how do you say I don't speak English? And I gave her that. And it's been so fun, and I've shared that with every student that I teach ever at Stanford. I don't speak English.
I would come to another symposium. I definitely would. It's been an experience. It's been fun.
This weekend has been really amazing. I don't regret coming at all, and I think everyone who is even trying to learn Cherokee or even knows what it is should try to come and join, because it's amazing to try to see the effort that's going on. We hear about revitalization all the time and what's being done for that to happen, but actually being here and experiencing it and seeing the people putting that into action really puts things in perspective and lets you see that you can be a part of this and that you can do it too. It's not something that you have to be some great scholar. It's just anyone can do it, because in doing that, I mean, everyone has the abilities.
Myself included, we have to push ourselves. We have to have that want to learn this language, or we're not going to get it.
I would say try to learn the language. There's no reason not to. And if you're trying to learn it, you need to accept that you will not be great at the start. I'm still not, and I've had exposure to this probably all of my life, and especially starting in 6th grade, and I'm still very beginner level. And I would say, as you're learning, don't be scared. Talk to your elders, your fluent speakers. I was really worried that they would be mad or judge me for speaking wrong, but I talked to a lady yesterday at the Yellow Hill Community Center, and she was very nice and very sweet and would help us out when we didn't know exactly what we were saying or even what we were trying to ask. So just keep an open mind.
Use me, text me, and I will get back to you. I promise I will get back to you, and I have, and I do. If you have a word, if you have a sentence, do not hesitate. Please get in touch with me. I'm happy to help you. And I want you to succeed. And I'm all about helping those students. I know a lot of them, they want to make an A in the course, but I don't think that's their main purpose. I think the main purpose is they want to learn. And while they're learning, they'll receive a good grade. And I just do everything that I can to make sure that they succeed, whatever it takes.
Just everybody needs to be aware of what's going on. I mean, 213, we're averaging over 19 a year, so you're looking at about 10 years before, our fluent speakers are down into single digits, I'd say, if not around 20, and that's not being mean, that's just being real. You've got some speakers, and that number 213, it's not considering those speakers who won't talk Cherokee. They've been beat at boarding schools and all that, so they don't care to talk even though they're on the list. They don't take in those who have no interest in sharing or teaching it. The next ones are those that are getting sick. They have dementia, they're in rest homes, they're at home bedridden, they can't get out and about, but they're on the list. Those people, they can't get out and share the language. So while we can, and while we still have the opportunity to, we need to get out as much as we can and record and document as much as we can while we're learning the language. ᎦዀჺმაგრᎯṕȳ. Use it, don't lose it. And that's kind of what it is. If you're going to learn the language, learn it and use it before it's lost.
It's never too late to start learning Cherokee. It's never too late. It's here for all of us. It's something that was created through the ingenuity of thousands of our ancestors. And they're the ones who put the love into the world that brought us into being. It's a miracle that we're here, and it's an honor for us to carry the language forward.